Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Let's talk about how to do the research proposal essay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and we're going to talk about how to do this together. All right, first things first. Um, we want to make sure that we are very clear about the purpose of this essay, right? So the purpose of this essay is to convince me that you have done a sufficient job with your research, okay? It's to convince me that you are ready to write on this topic. This paper is not intended to convince me to get on board with your Write for a Cause topic. That's what the final exam is supposed to do. All right, this is just to convince me of your research and to show me that you've done everything that you should do and that you have sufficient evidence from your research in order to support your research question. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're clear about the goal of this essay before you get started. So there are a couple of things you're going to need to do. Well, maybe a few more things than a couple. The first thing you're going to want to do is to engage. Okay, you're going to want to offer me an eye-catching introductory statement in your introduction paragraph. So we're going to talk about how to do that. The next thing you're going to want to do is connect. You want to make sure that you've demonstrated a personal connection to your topic by using information from your MyPlan assessment and personal information from your life to show and to demonstrate why this topic is interesting and engaging. I'm sorry, why this topic is interesting and relevant to you personally. The next thing you want to do is to ask a question. So to do this, you're going to ask a research question that's going to involve your topic, and then the goal of the paper is going to be to offer evidence or offer source material. When I say source material, just general, overall, broad ideas from the sources that you've chosen that can answer the research question. All right, so that's the next goal. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to organize, right? So for this essay, which is going to be different than what we've done before, so far we've just done paragraphs. For this essay, you're going to be writing a topic sentence, and that topic sentence is going to have to connect two or more sources under it in order to show the connection between these sources, and again, how these sources, through the topic sentence, can answer your research question. You're going to want to continue the process of explaining the 5 articles that you've selected, and you're going to have to still use summary skills. So this essay is not intended to have any direct quotes or any specific ideas, specific detailed information. It's still supposed to be essentially a broad overview of the source itself, right? So you're going to create for this essay a hypothesis. And a hypothesis in this essay is going to go in your conclusion paragraph, and that hypothesis is going to be an answer to your research question, what you believe the answer is going to be based upon the research that you've done so far. All right, so this hypothesis could turn into maybe the thesis statement of your analytical paper. Maybe too broad, right? So you may use something smaller, but this hypothesis usually for a general research assignment would turn into the main idea of a long drawn out research paper. We're not doing one of those for our class. We're just doing 2 short papers, the analytical and the final exam, but usually that's what that hypothesis is for, and you'll write that in a conclusion paragraph. The next thing is going to be reflect and project. For this essay, you're going to learn these 2 skills. For your conclusion paragraph, you're going to be expected to reflect, which is to summarize the major points that you've made so far, and then to project, which is going to be to take those ideas and talk about how those ideas could work in the future, maybe for future research, maybe in a way that you could extend this research, maybe in future assignments. So that's how researchers talk about what they're doing. They don't just talk about the conclusion of their work. They also talk about how this work can be, used or explained further in future ideas. All right, and you probably saw a little bit of that in your research articles. All right, so for this essay, it's going to be 750 to 1,500 words, and so you have to use sources that were part of your preliminary or annotated bibliography project, if you decide that you want a new source, maybe none of those sources work for you, or maybe all of those sources don't work, you need a new one here or there, then you can simply email me that source with the bibliographic entry. And then after I approve it, then you're ready to go. So let's talk about exactly how you write this paper. So the first thing you're going to need to do is to write an introduction paragraph, right? It has three movements. It has the introductory statement, which is going to be your eye catcher. It has a bridge, and that bridge is going to take you through pros and cons, agreements and disagreements. That bridge is going to connect your introductory statement to a research question, and that research question has to be phrased in a way that is open-ended, that makes the reader want to read more, have to read more in order to answer the research question. So this is going to take a bit of skill, and we're going to spend some time working on that. The body of the essay is essentially three major parts. It includes a topic sentence, and that topic sentence should logically connect 2 to 3 sources together. And you're going to introduce a source, and then you're going to provide significant information about that source as it relates to your research question. You'll use the same format as you did for the annotated bibliography to introduce your source. So you'll use the author's name, the title, journal, publication date, right? So you'll keep this same skill from the annotated bibliography, and you will then add in the significant information as it relates to the research question part. So it'll be a little bit more precise than what you did in the annotated bibliography. Therefore, you won't use as many details. You won't offer everything that's in the source, only the part that relates to the annotated bibliography. Only the part that relates to, the research question. The next part is that you will then offer a second source, right, that in some way relates to the first. And again, you will introduce the source using an introductory statement, if you will, and then you will provide significant information about the source as it relates to your research question. All right, so, and these two guys should go together in some way, source 1 and source 2, and you will want to make sure that you communicate how it works together, or use terms that clarify the connection between these sources in the topic sentence. So you'll write a second body paragraph, and you'll keep the same idea. So in this case, you will logically connect 2 or 3 sources together. Again, it will offer an answer to the research question. And it will show the relationship between these 2 or 3 sources. Or it may work out to where these other 3 sources don't necessarily have a connection together. So you'll just simply list the sources, the first one, the second one, and the third one. And when you list them, they'll simply exist in the same paragraph just because they can answer your research question, but not because they necessarily connect together. Okay? And so you'll introduce the first source as you did previously, and you'll provide significant information about the source as it relates to your research question. And then you'll do the next source, and then you'll do the final source, and you'll keep the same idea of introducing the source and providing significant information as it relates to your research question. Okay, so that's how your body paragraphs will work. You'll find that these are pretty easy to write because they will in some way remind you of writing the summary for the annotated bibliography. However, you have to be careful not to copy and paste from your annotated bibliography. You can't do that because that is submitting the same assignment twice, or presenting part of a previous assignment in a current assignment, and that is considered cheating. And so you have to actually use your own voice, and you will need to communicate these ideas. And a cool way and a good way to do that is to literally address the specific information that you offer in your research proposal question, okay? And so that will ensure that you are not, falling into temptation and copying and pasting from your annotated bibliography. All right. So the last thing that you will pay attention to is going to be the conclusion paragraph. In the conclusion paragraph, you're going to start that paragraph with what's called a hypothesis. And I talked about this a little bit earlier on the previous page, and that is going to be the answer to your research question, right? And then you will reflect and project on uh, on your two uh, on your two body paragraphs, right? So you'll do that by offering a summary sentence, if you will, of the first body paragraph, which is going to be that guy, that first topic sentence. And then you'll offer a projection. How could this topic sentence, or how can what's being discussed in this topic sentence be further researched in the future? You'll do the same thing for the second topic sentence, right? This guy. Now, if you do this listing pattern, you may have to go into a little bit more detail with your project part, mainly because, there will be three different ideas that will need projection, right? So you may have to go into a bit more detail when you do the reflect and project for the second topic sentence, all right? And the final thing you'll add in the conclusion paragraph is going to be a conclusion statement. All right. And for the conclusion statement, this is going to be a statement that's meant to leave a lasting impression on your reader or on your audience. So you want it to be something that is profound so that you can make sure that as I leave your essay and I prepare to start grading, that I have something very cool to think about as it relates to your topic. So you want to say something profound, if you will. All right. I always make the probably very corny statement that I want to think about what you're saying as I'm eating my Chick-fil-A for lunch. I want to have to think about it. So you want to say something nice there. Not nice like in happy nice, but something strong or powerful. All right. Let me open the floor at this point for any questions that you may have. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and ask them now. And if you're talking in the chat, I can't see it, so I'll need you to actually verbally ask the question. Okay, no questions so far? All right, and we're moving. So the first thing you want to do in order to create this essay is you want to create a list of possible research questions. These research questions should start by asking the questions why or how, right? So why exactly would you use questions that start with why and how? Well, why forces you to explain something that you'll need reasoning in order to fully explain, right? So if I ask you, for instance, about this wall behind me, I may ask you, why is this wall here? Well, you would have to, of course, know the structure of the house in order to figure out why this wall is here. But you'd be able to give me a logical reason for why the the builder of this house put the wall here maybe instead of a window, so it requires a little bit of explaining in order to figure that out. You may also ask the question of how. How makes you explain the process for something, right? So for instance, if we take the same wall behind me and you ask, or at least you pose the question of, how did this wall get here? Well, now we have to talk about the drywall. We have to talk about the brick that's behind it. We have to talk about any insulation or anything like that. Maybe the types of 2x4s or the types of wood that may have been used in order to create this wall. And that then will require you to talk about not just the materials, but the process, right? And so when you ask how, you now are asking a question that will require an explanation. Why and how are the best questions to ask for research questions? You can ask a what question. And what is an identifying question? Again, look at this wall. If you ask, what is this behind me, then I have an answer for that. It's a wall. It doesn't take a lot of thought to think about what something is. So it's not going to be the strongest research question, right? Because the research question should not have a one-word answer. The research question should require you to go into detail in order to answer the question. So you can ask a what question, but if you do, your sources should go through the process of explaining what something is. Of the three questions, what is my least favorite because it does not really spark imagination, it doesn't really spark inspiration in terms of questions or answers. Instead, it just provides basic information. So it can be used, but I would use it with caution. So now that you've gone through the process of thinking about the type of question that you can ask, you want to now come up with a list of possible questions. So you want to write at least 3 possible questions, and then you want to figure out which of the 3 questions you've written will be your best question. To figure out your best question, you may want to figure out uh, how many topics do you have that can answer your research question. So take a quick scan of your topics, which are going to be the titles for each of your articles, to see of the 3 questions you've asked, which titles go along best with those 3 questions, or maybe a particular question. You should be able to connect each article to the research question before choosing a final research question, right? So once you have a winner, then you want to make sure that you phrase that question with why, how, or what. And don't forget that question should not have an easy or obvious or vague response. If you guys completed your RTL lab, number 4, it talks about thesis statements and what makes a good thesis statement. And so we know that a good thesis statement should not be easy, obvious, or vague. Instead, a good thesis statement should be something that you have to unravel a bit, something that is arguable. So it should have a topic, which is going to be, of course, the topic of your essay. You've already worked on that. And then it should have a controlling idea. The controlling idea is going to be a part of that research question. So it's going to be phrased in a way to where it is a research question that's specific to what the 5 sources are talking about, and something that is arguable that you have to then explain. All right. Are there any questions about how to form the research question? Okay, and we're moving. So here are 2 videos here that are going to give you some info on how to write the introductory statement. I'm going to go over some of the information, but I want you to watch the videos to get the more specific parts of it. But I want to make sure that you have a decent overview from the video that we're currently filming now. So the first thing is that for the introduction paragraph, you should have an eye-catching introductory statement. So this introductory statement has 3 options for you to consider, and these are the only 3 options that I want you to consider. I don't want you to choose another option because I am teaching a skill by introducing these 3 options for this essay. All right, so you can start with historical information about your topic, and to do that, you want to start at the origin, at the very beginning of your topic, whatever that is. All right, so here's some questions to ask. When was it first invented, whatever it is, or when was it first discovered? Who discovered it and exposed it to the world? So you want to include that type of information, or where was it first established? Okay. So for instance, if you were thinking about a topic on eliminating flesh-eating bacteria in Lake Jackson, which is actually a current event right now in Houston, then maybe you would want to start with maybe when flesh-eating bacteria or brain-eating bacteria was first discovered. And maybe where it was discovered and the scientists that made the discovery, or maybe the people who were impacted by it, right? So if you want to write for cause to eliminate that out of, city reservoirs or whatever, then you want to go all the way back to the beginning. Don't forget that when you're doing this, you want to add a specific date, and then you want to narrow your information to lead to your reason for research. Okay, and then you want to connect the historical data to your modern topic by using transition sentences. And this is called the funnel approach for writing introduction paragraphs. And I hope that when I click this link, it takes me there. It did not. So, so I will update that link, but it's just another page in Canvas that will show you different approaches for writing introduction paragraphs. And we will use this for the analytical essay. So this is more of a support tool for this essay, not a primary tool. Your primary tool is here. The next option that you can use to write this eye-catching introductory statement is going to be starting with a rhetorical question. Now this is tricky because you have a research question, which is going to be at the end of your paragraph, and then you have a rhetorical question that can start your paragraph. So if you start with two questions, your first eye-catching rhetorical question needs to be a really good one. And to do this, you may want to include factual data or a shocking statistic. All right. And I think a shocking statistic works best here, mainly because it differentiates your attention grabbing question from your research proposal thesis research question, right? You want them to be very different. So for this, you want to make sure that your rhetorical question to start your paper does not have a yes or no answer. It should always be open-ended, all right? And we talked about the how, why, and what in the previous slide or in the previous page. So the same rules apply. However, for this type of question, you should use why and how. Do not use what. What is too boring of a start for this type of question. You want to make sure you use why and how. You want to make sure that as you guide yourself out of this rhetorical question, you need to have essentially an answer to the question or offer relevant information, right? Try to answer the question in different ways. You can expound on the information requested in a rhetorical question, right? By maybe if your rhetorical question is, how does flesh-eating bacteria get into a lake near Houston, Texas, right? Or how did a 6-year-old boy die from flesh-eating bacteria in Houston, Texas in September of 2020, right? So then what I do after that is I would try to explain it in some sort of way. Maybe I would talk about, how he went to the lake and was swimming with his family, and how he started complaining of headaches, and how he died, within days of going swimming, and maybe talk about, that process. And so what you could do is consider offering additional facts to explain various points of view surrounding your rhetorical question. So maybe you can talk about, maybe how that bacteria ends up there. Maybe it's someone polluted the water. I don't know. You would have to, and I would have to know more about that topic in order to be able to explain it logically. So you would want to offer those facts. One of the things you don't want to do, you don't want to ask several questions. I think this is something that is taught in K-12 education, where you ask a bunch of questions in order to lead to your thesis. And on its face, it's not a bad idea, but remember, you have a research question at the end of this paragraph, and so it's not gonna work. You want to make sure that you're answering these questions and not just piling on a bunch of questions. Believe it or not, it's effective, but it's also kind of a lazy way to write because you're not answering anything and you're making your reader do all the work. And at a point, it's too much. It's like putting too much mustard on a hot dog. It's just too much. So you want to make sure that you are doing the work to explain, because remember, your job is to convince me that you are well equipped to write on your topic. The last option that you have is the anecdotal introductory statement, where you tell a story about your topic and you explain why or how it's meaningful to you. So you want to make the story interesting. To do that, you maybe want to start with a dialogue between you and someone else, or create a vivid scene where we as your audience know the setting and the plot. You want to create a sense of mystery or interest in the opening lines of your essay. You have to be prepared that it's going to take a few sentences to tell your story, because a good story develops over time. A lot of students want to just kind of say, you know, my parents and I got into a bad discussion over politics, and it ended terribly, and I don't know why it did, but I think that, you know, it's important that, you know, families are able to share different points of view without, you know, causing major disruptions. Well, that's good that you told me that, but imagine how much more powerful it would be if you maybe told me what was said and how eye-catching or attention-grabbing that would be. All right, so you want to do that type of work. You want to offer that kind of information. And so it's much more meaningful and it's much more interesting to read, as opposed to, you know, just kind of giving me a bland summary of it. You want to give me the details. So the narrative must have a point, right? Don't ramble. And the anecdote must guide toward a discussion about the topic, all right? So maybe consider how different people saw the dilemma in your story when you're writing your bridge. And this method is demonstrated in the anecdotal approach for writing introduction paragraphs. And then click on this link, and I promise you, if the previous link did not translate when I did the course migration, this one didn't either. So I'll update both links, so I won't click on it. Again, this is just support information. It's not necessary for this particular paper. It just offers another layer of support. This information can also be found in lab number 7 in your RTL lab, if you want to take a look at it there. In fact, it's a little bit more precise there. All right, are there any questions over the introductory statement? Any questions over the 3 methods for writing? Anything like that? Okay, all right, let's talk about now the bridge, okay? So the bridge is the part of the essay where you are, well, it's not part of the essay, it's part of the introduction paragraph, where you are now connecting your introductory statement, your attention grabber, to your research question, okay? So the bridge is really important because it's actually the main part of your introduction paragraph. So the bridge needs to have a discussion format. In other words, as you leave out of whatever your attention grabbing statement is, which is going to be either option 1, 2, or 3, then you want to offer a discussion. So that can be either pros and cons, where you consider at least 3 positives and negatives of your topic, or you can offer 3 opposing viewpoints stating agreements and disagreements on your topic. If you choose the first option, all you're doing are telling me the positives and negatives about the topic itself from whatever it is that you discuss up here. If you choose option 3, then you're going to start with people who may agree with you and people who may disagree with you. To do this, you want to start with people who disagree with you first. So maybe give their point of view and then move to those who agree with you. Okay? And the reason you want to do that is because if you move to those who agree with you, then it moves you nicely into your personal reasons for research, because now those 2 things are connected. right? And so you can easily move out of this particular point of view agrees with me, and this is the reason why I'm going, or this is the reason why I conducted this research, or this is the reason why I chose this topic. One of the hardest things to do for this introduction paragraph is to include your My Plan assessment. You have to do this. It is required. If you don't do it, you will lose points on your paragraph. So you'll have to figure out a way to put that in there, and I think there's a sample or two that does this and does this pretty well. Narrow the information to lead to your research question, right? So you can use phrases like this led me to ask, this made me want to know, all of this made me question, this led me to want to research this topic and ask the question. So you can copy and paste or use any of these phrases to guide into your reasons for research, okay? So your bridge includes a discussion, it includes your My Plan assessment, and it includes your personal reasons for research. All right. Are there any questions about the bridge of the introduction paragraph? Okay. Keep in mind, you will be using this structure where you write an introductory statement and a bridge in all of your essays for this semester. So you want to get used to this idea. You may feel like you're being thrown in cold water, but I promise you the first one is maybe a little tough to do, but the other ones will come more easily. All right. And then finally, at the end, you'll add your research question. Okay. Your research question is the thesis of this essay, and so all other ideas will hinge on the research question. And we've already rather talked about how to write this research question, so I won't belabor that point. So after you write the introduction paragraph, you will then write your body paragraphs. And again, you have a video there to kind of walk you through this and to kind of talk you through it as you are putting together your own body paragraphs for your essay. So for this, you are going to establish the topic in a topic sentence, right? So in order to do that, you want to make sure that you have at least two sources, maybe three sources that talk about the same thing. Okay, so this is a process for getting your topics, all right? It tells you step by step what to do. Search the titles, see if you have articles written in the same journal or by the same author. That's a good little tip to use. You can look at the dates to see if the dates connect. Maybe because there's a current event, like I talked about the flesh-eating or brain-eating bacteria that was found in Lake Jackson recently. And you can look at that, or maybe you can determine if one article discusses another aspect or an aspect of another article. All right, so these are ways that you can try to connect 2 to 3 articles together. When you write the topic sentence, again, I'm going to plug RTL Lab 4 for thesis statements and topic sentences and main ideas. If you have not done RTL Lab 4, you want to, so that the terminology that's used here makes sense. Here, you want to make sure that you have a topic and a controlling idea. I talked about this in the previous page, so I won't belabor the point. Keep in mind that the topic is what the paragraph is about, and the controlling idea offers a narrow perspective of your topic. All right, so that's going to be something I'm looking for in each one of your body paragraphs. All right, you need to have a strong topic sentence. The next thing is that you want to have supporting details. Okay, so you want to use emphatic order in order to create supporting details, okay? Now, emphatic order is going to be strongest to weakest ideas, all right? So the strongest ideas or the strongest topic sentence you have that answers your research question is the one that you want to use first, right? So you want to come up with the two topic sentences. You want to look at your articles and say, I could write a topic sentence on this side, on these two right here. Here's the topic sentence. And now here's a topic sentence for these three right here. And then you want to figure out which one of these topic sentences best answers my research question. And that's the one that you want to use first, right? And so to do that, you should write those down first. The next thing you want to do is then use language that will support those topic sentences. All right. So we already know that we need to create an introductory statement that includes the title, author, publication, publication date. However, when writing those topic sentences, however, whenever connecting the ideas together in the paragraphs, you want to use comparison words if the two articles compare with each other. And here's a list of transition words. Contrast words if the articles refute each other. In other words, they don't agree. In fact, they're polar opposite. You can put those two articles in the paragraph together, and here's some contrast transition words to use. You can also use cause and effect words if the articles, one maybe suggests the cause or the reason, maybe for flesh eating bacteria, and then another article maybe talks about the effects of it and how that affects children or how that affects older adults. So these are the types of transition words that I'll look for in your paragraphs. We practice this skill with the annotated bibliography, and so we will continue with this skill for this essay. I already went over exactly how this paragraph should be set up, so I won't go through this process again. The one thing that is different or that's included in this outline structure that was not included in the previous is that use of transition words, right? So if you notice, you introduce your topic sentence, we talked about that, and you introduce your first source, we talked about that. But look, here's this little transition word reminder. So when you're introducing your second source, use a transition word and then, or use a transition word in a sentence and then connect your introductory statement for your second source, maybe the summary thesis for your second source, and then provide significant information about the source itself. And so, oh yes, let me mention that. You can use summary thesis statements from the annotated bibliography. Don't copy and paste them, write them fresh for this, but you can use that in order to talk about the general overall idea of the article and then provide significant information about the source as it relates to your research question. So you have a lot of good information from your research, your annotated bibliography that you can use for your research proposal. All right. So if you follow this outline that's already been explained actually at this point, then you should be just fine. It will take you from source 1 all the way down to source 5. Now, say in the off chance that you have two articles that work together and you can write a body paragraph for that, and then two more articles that work together and you can write body paragraph for that, and then you have one oddball article that doesn't necessarily go with either one of those two paragraphs. You can then write a third body paragraph that just addresses that one article. This is an exception to the rule. It should not happen very often. And if it happens, it must be a very strong reason for it happening. All right. If that happens, then your third source, or that, not your third source, but that third body paragraph is likely going to be your weakest, and it should go near the conclusion. We talked about the reflect and project idea from the previous slide, the one that we covered maybe 3 or 4 pages ago. And so I won't go into a lot of detail about it. I've already explained it, but you want to use keywords in order to write your hypothesis. So again, you can copy and paste one of these phrases in order to help you get this idea clearly communicated. Your hypothesis should be the first part of the paragraph, and it should start with a transition phrase. For the conclusion transition, which is at the very end of your paragraph, uh, again, you'll be using a conclusion transition phrase, just as we did in the research proposal. All right. I've already talked about how to do reflect and project for topic sentence 1 and topic sentence 2. That conclusion transition statement that I just talked about up here would be used down here. Okay. And there's a video to talk about that a little bit more. And that's basically it. You have a couple of samples here to review. Notice that you have bold and underlined research questions and hypothesis. This is a part of the instruction, so you want to remember to do it. And you want to note the different lengths. So look at the strength of this particular introduction paragraph. This student went into quite a bit of detail, and it's not a bad paper at all. In fact, it's a really good paper. This one does a good job of showing you how they use their MyPlan results. It's one of the strengths of this paper. And then you have this paper. In this paper, you can kind of tell on its face has some challenges, and so you'll read this one after reading the first two, and you'll be able to talk very clearly about the strengths and weaknesses of both papers. You will have a discussion question on this assignment where you look at the sample research proposal essays, and you will then write your own research proposal essay for this assignment, and you will have a peer review for the research proposal. So you'll look at the samples, review those, and then you'll have a peer review for your second assignment for this, all right? And then you will submit your right for cause research proposal essay to me, all right? And that's essentially the gist of this assignment. Are there any questions for me about this assignment? No? Okay, well, I'm going to end here. And I really appreciate you guys taking out time to work on this today. And